First one was a graham cracker, the second one was a raisin, and the third one was celery. In the mail time segment, the mailbox tells Steve a knock knock joke. After that, mailbox gives Steve his letter, which Steve opens. The video letter segment featured three kids making shadow puppets. Soon after, Steve sees a ghost in the picture frame. Blue appears and was too scared to skidoo into a spooky haunted house alone. Steve suggests that he and Blue skidoo together. Blue happily agrees with the idea with Steve, along with a high five. After that, they look for the little ghost. They find him, and he turns out to be friendly, and he tells them his name is Boo. Whenever he hears his name, he gets startled. Suddenly, they heard a thump, 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 thump sound. It was the sound of footsteps. A kitten came down the staircase. It's revealed to be Boo's kitten. Then they heard a loud boom sound, and it turned out to be thunder outside. And then they hear banging. It was the sound of pots and pans. Boo's dad was making lunch for Boo in the kitchen. Boo thanks Steve and Blue for their help. Blue and Steve ski-doo back home. Immediately after that, Steve gets startled by a ringing sound, which turns out to be the telephone. Steve answers it, and all he hears was a hooting sound, which has a paw print on it, meaning it's a clue. Steve hangs up the phone and draws the third clue in his notebook. After that, he goes to the thinking chair to put all three clues together. The clues were a feather, a shadow, and a hooting sound. Steve thought it was a shadow dancing feather. That was not the right answer. The viewers thought it was an owl because an owl has feathers. Its shadow matches an owl's shape and an owl hoots. After figuring out Blue's clues, Steve and Blue go into the bedroom and see the owl out the window. The owl hooted happily. He wanted to speak to her, but poor Blue was still scared. But after a matter of minutes, they introduced themselves, and now Blue overcame her fear. Mr. Salt, Mrs. Pepper, Shovel, Pail, and Boo came to see the owl. Owl was now Blue's friend. After that, Steve goes into the living room and sings the So Long song, and the episode ends. Steve and Blue invite the viewers inside the house. After that, the phone rings. Steve answers the phone. Magenta was on the phone and wanted to talk to Blue. What Magenta was saying is that she is coming to Steve and Blue later on. After talking to Magenta, Steve hangs up. So Steve and Blue had to get ready and had to figure out what they can do when Magenta comes over. Blue leaves a paw print on the screen. It was time for another playing of Blue's Clues. Now Steve had to figure out the best way to remove the paw print. Blue comes in and brushes away the paw print with her ears going from top to bottom. After that, it was time to get the notebook. Steve was already in the living room and walks over to side table to get his notebook. Steve brushes up on the rules to play Blue's Clues to the viewers. After the demo song, Steve did not know where Blue went. The viewers told Steve that Blue went to the left. So, as Steve was looking for clues, the viewer points out a clue on his back from a mirror. Steve stops and wonders where the clue was. The viewers told him, on your back, thought that Steve should look at the wall. Steve shrugs, and then the paw print appears from behind his back. Then it moves, sits on his chest. Steve looks down at his chest, and he realized that he was suddenly the first clue. Steve gets out of his notebook and draws himself. What Steve is trying to figure out is what to do when Magenta comes over with Steve as the first clue. Steve decides to look for more Blue's clues. Blue calls out, and then she listens. A few voices say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ready or not, here we come. It was Shovel and Pail, find themselves by mistake and bumped into each other. Uh, what Shovel and Pail were trying to do is find their friends who needed help. Steve and Blue pitched in to help Shovel and Pail find their friends. Steve wonders who to look for first. Shovel and Pail decide to look for Duck. As they go along, they try to be quiet, hoping no one else will know about the footprints. Steve, Blue, Shovel, and Pail found a series of footprints. Steve needed help in figuring out which footprints led to Duck. The footprints in the middle were duck prints. So they followed the path in the middle, which stopped at a lake. Duck pokes out from behind the grass. Shovel and Pail found Duck, and now they got to find Snail. Along the way, they found more prints. Steve looks at the clues again, and maybe he could do something with the camera and say smile. The viewers tell Steve asks the viewers at home which trail led to Snail. The long straight line was the way to find Snail. Sure enough, they find Snail. Snail winks and moves slowly away. Steve looks at the clues again, and maybe he could do something with the camera and say smile. The viewers tell Steve and Blue had to get going because it was almost time for Magenta to come over. Steve finds footprints and realized it was his footprints, although he admits he was just checking. Back inside the house, Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper were discussing opposites in the kitchen. Steve and Blue come into the kitchen to see what they are up to. Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper were making a snack for when Magenta comes over. They decided to make race cars, one for Magenta and one for Blue. Steve was perplexed a little and said, race cars for a snack. Mr. Salt specifically meant that they were going to make race cars out of food so they can eat them after they made them. Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper needed help on what food to use to make race cars. Mrs. Pepper starts with a carrot, and Mr. Salt wants the opposite for making his race car. Opposite of the shortest is the longest, and the longest vegetable between the pickle, the asparagus spear, the, and the celery stalk was the celery. So far, they got the bodies of the race car. Mr. Salt comes back and picks out crackers for his race car because they are the biggest. Mrs. Pepper wants the opposite of her race car. The the opposite of the biggest is the smallest, and the smallest sized circles on the table between the carrot slices, the zucchini slices, and the peas were the peas. Now they got wheels for race cars. All that is left is the seat. Mrs. Pepper finds broccoli for her race car, which is the bumpiest. Mr. Salt wanted the opposite for his race car. The opposite of the bumpiest is smoothest, and the smoothest vegetable on the table between the kabocha, the sweet potato, and the cultivated mushroom was the mushroom. Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper have finished making their race cars. Mr. Salt says viola for magenta. Mrs. Pepper says viola for blue. Steve was amazed, and they did look a lot like race cars. Once they thank Steve for their help, Steve pretends to be a race car, presumably a dragster, so as he goes in a straight line, by suddenly passing the second clue, and it was on a smile icon. When the kids stop him, Steve gets out of the notebook and draws the smile icon. So far, Steve has collected 2 clues. First clue was Steve himself, and the second clue is a smile. Steve had to find the last clue. Steve thought the viewer said something, so Steve looks around and sees Freddie and Fifi, the felt friends, on the felt board. The felt friends needed help. Blew skidoos into the felt board to help Freddie and Fifi. Steve looks at the clues again, and maybe he could do something with the camera and say smile. The viewers tell Steve skidoos too. Freddie and Fifi were playing dress up. Freddie and Fifi have to figure out 2 kinds of costumes that go together. Fifi dresses as an umpire. Freddie did not know what he should dress up as. Steve wanted to know which costume goes with an umpire. The viewers tell them it was the baseball player. Freddie dressed as a baseball player, and Fifi dressed as an umpire. Freddie and Fifi decide to dress as someone else. Freddie dresses as a lifeguard. Fifi ponders about what she should be if Freddie is dressed as a lifeguard. The viewers tell them that the swimmer is what Fifi should be. Freddie and Fifi try out another set of different costumes. Fifi is now an astronaut. Freddie had to think about which costume to choose if Fifi is dressed as an astronaut. The viewers tell him that the alien works best. Freddie and Fifi thank Steve for their help. Blue and Steve skidoo back home. Once back home, it was mail time. The mailbox comes in through the window and gives Steve his letter. Steve thanks Mailbox, and then Mailbox leaves. Steve opens the letter, and it was a letter from his friends. 2 kids played with blocks, had a snack, and dressed up in costumes and funny hats. After watching, Steve could not wait for Magenta to come over. They were running out of time and had to find the last clue.